Oh, hibiscus. We are very much in the astrological era of God teaching you how to divinely sucker punch back the enemy. Let me explain, right? Because this is not just about throwing hands. I want you to consider how you've been feeling since the end of May all the way until present day. I think it'd be very fair to say many of you watching this video throughout June and most of July, you have felt a deep sense of frustration, anger, and all round, I was saying, feeling fed up. But this is not the kind of rage that reduces you to ashes. No, this is very much the fire that pretty much creates a blade. And it's so important that you allow yourself to learn how to sucker punch back, because whilst you may think, well, my anger about A, B, and C is probably really frivolous or it's too individualistic, not at all. What have I been teaching you for the last few years? Astrologically, what are we in? The downfall of colonialism. So that means economically, culturally, spiritually, on so many different aspects of life, with all the wonderful, diverse talents and skills that you have, hibiscuses, from 2025, that's when we start building. But think of any good project. We may come across the land or the canvas of what we are going to build, but there might be a few scraps. So what do we have to do? We have to bulldoze through, take out the foundations, put everything in the bin, and then we can build on land that is safe, stable, and sanitized. Can I tell you something? Everything you feel like you're feeling at the moment, which probably makes you feel like you're being buried by everything, you're not. You're being planted. You might look and feel like you are in a ruckus or in the mud, but think about the nature of any big oak tree or like gargantuous plant. They don't start off mighty. It is a itty bitty seed plunged into the darkest of soils, and through the process, before you know it, bada boom, bada bing. And what does it do? It stands against time. Regardless of the fires, regardless of the seasons, regardless of the people that come through, it has strong roots. That is very much what June and July was prepping you for, is how to endure, how to be planted, and find the energy to grow regardless. So you know the routine. Grab a cup of chai, get comfortable. I want to have a really motivational cosmic chit chat with you all about what the purpose of Ketu and Mars going conjunct was, because it wasn't just about violence and mindlessness. It was very much about the people understanding you have the power, you have the voice, now learn how to use them so you can make impact and a difference. Let's go.
The damage is done, baby.
Wait a minute, before I forget, do me a favor. Moving forward, make sure you are following me on Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon if you would like to know how these transits affect you as an individual. So if you've been following me for a while now, I obviously have a lot of spicy predictions that you are watching happen very, very quickly. And I think the responsible thing to do is create video essays where we go by those predictions one by one, understand why we are going through these trials, these challenges and obstacles, and how best to overcome them. And also, I think it's a nice way for you guys to learn about different global issues and connect, because that's going to be key to dismantling fascism. Other than that, let's get back to business, hibiscuses. As always, let's begin by understanding the astrological context in which we are existing in, because it's super important when, yes, we look at Saturn and Jupiter and Rahu and Ketu, we get those big predictions. When we also are considering what Sun, Mars, Venus, and Mercury are up to, they give us an indication of how we should be jiggling and moving and grooving during this time to really meet our goals and make those big changes that we are desperately trying to see in society. So if you've been following me for a while now, you're very much used to me saying that, look, when we get into mid-2025, astrologically, we begin this 20-year chapter, which is a complete game changer, not just for our individual lives, but honestly, for so many different cultures, for so many different society, it is really a change in what we are so used to. In fact, the old way of existing and understanding the world is completely going to crumble in the first 3 years of this chapter. So the reason for that is, let's begin with just the numerology of it all, right? So for us, 2025 is a Mars-ruled year. And my tagline was, it's the year of the great humiliation. And the reason I truly felt that was, number one, right? Mars represents power coups and power struggles. And again, if you've been following me for a while now, my whole approach has been, astrologically, for many decades, we are now in the downfall of colonialism. So what you are going to see consistently and so frequently is very self-reassured people who, again, are complicit with oppression, are aligned with, I would say, systems and norms and narratives and propaganda and, all kinds of behaviors that seek to harm other people. That confidence, that self-assuredness is going to crumble because they are no longer allowed to exploit wealth, people, land, resources, and extract the same level of value that they are so used to. So again, this is an international audience. Hibiscus is very fortunate you all are blossoming around the world with me, but think about yourselves, the country you exist in, the culture you exist in. I think we have more than enough examples by the time we're in July 2025 of how many figures have been humiliated by their arrogance, their bigotry, their obnoxiousness, right? And it's so funny because they're spiraling in real life, right? We are literally seeing them trying to keep a cool demeanor, but the more vicious and violent they get, it just signals to us and our souls this chapter is ending for them. They no longer have the control and influence they used to, right? And likewise, I think also in so many different ways, you're seeing so many clear signs that if people want to continue running societies, industries, and sectors in particular ways that they're used to, it's just not going to work out. So again, there's just this sense of humiliation. And again, if you follow me, you know that the one observation I have come to in 16 years of Vedic astrology is God is a comedian. And sometimes the joke may take a while to craft, but when that punchline hits, bada boom, bada bing, right? So then go a little bit deeper. We have Rahu and Ketu, which are essentially like the karmic nodes, right? They very much are fate, destiny, the divine plan being unveiled. This is very much God's hands when you look at Rahu and Ketu. So from the middle of 2025 and then, kind of end of 2026, early 2027, Rahu, a planet of disruption, making sure radical change can occur by provoking things. Again, internationalness, globalness, technology, deception, and kind of unsavory behaviors. Well, it's going through the 9 types of Aquarius, and the Aquarius nakshatras all belong to Shiva. And Shiva is this wonderful embodiment of divine rage and destruction because it allows you to know that through chaos, and sometimes the only way is through chaos, can you truly have peace, inclusivity, and like a real sense of stableness. I often use this example that if you think about the might of Shivji, really his power lies and he can break bread with anyone and he doesn't care for validation or this need to kind of flex his power. If you put this all together, right, we're in a time of radical healing, radical solidarity, and I also think reclaiming. The one thing, and you'll see this again in future readings that we're going to do on this channel, a lot of the opportunities that are coming up, right, to reclaim our privacy, to reclaim our dignity, to essentially exist in a way that is not exploitive, will require us to step up in sectors like media, in government roles, in education, in healthcare and finance. And it's going to happen, but we've got to feel comfortable with working through the chaos. Because again, which leads me to Ketu. Ketu is a planet that symbolizes backbiting, right? Breaking through limitations, wealth accumulations. And again, some elements of unresolved past life karmas. It's going through the 9 types of Leo, right? So with the Leo nakshatras, think about them. Uttapaguni is social values. It's the literal social contract, the purpose and responsibilities in our various partnerships, not just romantic. Then you have Purvafaguni. Purvafaguni is so much about materialism, wealth, shared assets and resources, pleasure. Then you have Marga, right? The divine ancestors, the leaders, the hierarchy. Ketu going through these types of energies tell us what hibiscus is. Number 1, those who are so used to being in seats of power and exploiting and kind of, again, using very spooky norms, systems and structures and hierarchy to be greedy, to harm others. It's like all the worst aspects of humanity. It's disrupted. It's no longer so easy to hold on to that, right? Likewise, we're seeing a repetitive theme. The way they are used to extracting wealth and value is no longer functional. And most importantly, I want to take you back to that idea of the social contract. Now, this is something, I study colonialism, right? And there is definitely a blueprint in colonialism that is global. Regardless if you look at French colonialism, Spanish, British, Dutch, there is like an OG blueprint that all of them use, and it has served them well. And so much of it is heavily relying on ensuring that victims of their oppression keep participating in those dynamics. The one thing that I think has always really surprised me when I've been studying is how psychological oppression and harm is, right? And the victims of oppression take back their mental space, their energy, they decrease and then hopefully obliterate the influence of these people. And again, these very, very nasty, like kind of hierarchies, they can no longer function. And if they cannot function and they cannot influence, then essentially they are obsolete. But then we end up in a position where we have to make sure oppressed people don't go on to be the oppressor. And that's where really the work lies, right? Then look at the other side of it. Saturn, the enforcer of karmas, the dissolving of illusions, wealth accumulation, once again. But also stuff like human misery and the unconventional, the unorthodox. Well, it's going through the 9 types of Pisces, and the Pisces nakshatras. Really, the 3 biggest themes I would say that exist in the Pisces nakshatras is delusion, enlightenment, and imprisonment. Because Saturn going through the Pisces nakshatras is the ending of all endings. And when you start to shape up just these few transits alone, the long-term goal within these next 3 years specifically is about you learning how to stand up for yourself. We are ending the psychological manipulation that your employers have, where they normalize you begging for money, but, exasperating your energy levels. We are ending the norms of us having to pick between the lesser of 2 evils when it comes to ruling governments, who again are civil servants. You should be marked and revered on your ability to look after us as a society, not on how much you can essentially dupe us into thinking your extraction of our wealth, of our time, of our value, of our dignity is that's what makes you smart. Absolutely not. This is the ending of overconsumption. This is the ending of you consuming media and public figures that always make you feel like you're not enough. In some ways, the endings of endings is nothing to fear. It's your liberation, right? Again, if you go to my other social media pages, it probably comes across initially very spooky, but when you begin to kind of digest the stuff I'm putting out, I talk a lot about this is very much divine liberation, but for other people, they're going to become imprisoned because, again, Vedic astrology is religious practice, right? It's so much determined by karmas, free will, the concept of God, all that kind of jazz. So again, this is a time where I feel very strongly 70-80% of you are going to start fighting back in your own ways. And it's good because, listen, it's not that you have to do everything at once, but when you feel comfortable, or even this, when you take one step, you decrease fear because you're like, oh, nothing bad happened. Great. You take 5 or 6 and you're like, oh, I can kind of hold my balance. And then before you know it, these steps turn into a longer journey, and then you're running, then you're hitting the finish line, right? But initially it's just getting you out that fear mindset to know you can go on that journey and you're going to be okay. Now, it doesn't mean the journey is going to be smooth, but we're going to get you there. And you always keep in mind, there is nothing you will ever go through that God does not think you can endure. And sometimes you have to go through so you actually understand what muscles you have. Now, on the other side, right? Listen, we exist in Kali Yuga, we exist around Maya. There will be some people that won't be able to get out of a fear mindset. They're not going to, for whatever reasons, they're very much shackled to their oppression, right? And for whatever reason, they don't think it's valuable for them to part from that. That is the element where I'm talking about karmic imprisonment. Because again, you know, I said like, this is the year of the great humiliation. Originally, when I was writing that horoscope, like in early 2024, I kept having this really intense feeling, because as I've gotten older, my work is more political, but I think that is the purpose of Vedic astrology. It is here to exist and help people navigate through the most tumultuous times. And I would be very wary of people who try and sell you love and light and basically are kind of grooming you to stay numb and docile in an era where you fighting back and being so switched on and so emotionally connected is very necessary. Like, I would have very spooky and concerning feelings, right? But sorry, the point I was trying to make was, one of the first kind of things that I thought about was there are so many people across many different cultures who are fascist, right? And what they can't understand is we live in an era of globalization, of multiculturalism, all these really beautiful things of humanity and connectedness. It doesn't logically make sense for you to then start condemning other groups when in some way you are benefiting from globalization and multiculturalism, or that sense of, like, I would say, like, interconnectedness with different groups of people outside of your bubble, and think it's going to end well for you. And look where we are in 2025. You have a plethora of different kind of marginalized people who voted for basically fascist figures. And again, across the world, they are losing money. They are losing their rights. Their children are having a tougher time. And it's just, there is like, it's a leela in some ways. It's a divine tragedy, but a comedy simultaneously, right? Put that all together in such tumultuous energy. Why would you ever think your MO is to be agreeable, to sit still and just endure and wait for change? You are the change. You understand? You're being riled up because energy in you is meant to go somewhere. And it's all about teaching you how to use that energy strategically, right? So as we go through this horoscope and you think about how you felt in these last 2 months, the things that pissed you off, like I said at the beginning, this is not about making you feel powerless or, you know, fanning the flames of your anger. This is about transmuting that fire in you and teaching you how to bring warmth, how to unfreeze stagnant movements. And again, fire is life, fire is messaging, fire is sacrifice in some ways. We gotta make you feel comfortable with the heat, because now you're in the kitchen and it is time to cook. Even if you think about Jupiter, which is so funny to me. So on TikTok, I started sharing, you guys actually know Jupiter represents misfortune. And people are like, wait, what? I always thought it's planet fortune. And I'm like, yeah, only in very particular circumstances, because Jupiter's nature is to expand. And if you study Jupiter through our religious scriptures, you know, sometimes Jupiter, a little mean girl, you know, it's not the most friendliest of behaviors. So when someone has a skewed Jupiter, or we feel again the karma is being collated, or the free will is being misused in some way, we're like, oh, they're literally cementing the misfortune. That, because the thing is, Jupiter comes and then Saturn follows. So we're like, oh, in the flexibility of using their free will, and again, being empowered to do whatever they want to do, whilst they may not be feeling the consequences now, Saturn always follows Jupiter. So it doesn't matter how many years you had of Jupiterian energy, Saturn will come and reflect to you everything that you are and you have done. And then when he enforces your karmas, boom. But think of it like this. Jupiter, a planet of fortune, misfortune, expansion, ethics, technology once again, you know, knowledge, is going through the Gemini nakshatras. begins in Mrigasira, the hunt. You are searching for your truth. You are wanting to hear the truth. You are feeling more intellectually curious and experimental than you have ever been. Use that energy to guide you or start figuring out the solutions we need to these very intimidating challenges and obstacles that have been presented to us. And even then, don't feel sorry for yourself, because the cycle of reincarnation is kind of linked to this notion that you are reincarnated at a time where God feels like it's either very pivotal for your growth as a soul, or you have a lot of youth, you know, like you have use in you, you have talent. We got to get you feeling comfortable on wielding those talents and skills. So we're in the moving groove. Then we have Ardra, you know, again, ruled by Rudra, a fierce form of Shiva. Now, Ardra is about innovation and transformation, but it deals a lot with chaos. And sometimes, you know, one of its hardest things is it's only knowledge that can come post very tumultuous, distressing situations. But this doesn't mean, I mean, more fuckeries are coming, but I also want you to think of it like this. Think of all that you have endured and you have seen. How much more do you need to see before you start implementing changes? And likewise, hibiscuses. I'm not being funny. For me, like, I don't really believe in age the more I do my work, because I don't think it's you are a particular age and you are designated, you are going to be like that smart. You are not out of an age where like that's when you will be the most talented. These things are fluid and it varies person to person. I am of the belief, whenever you watch this, whoever I'm speaking to now, you have the tool set. We need you to get to work. You know what works, you know what doesn't, and don't worry, you'll learn on the job, but we need to start building. Because Rudra, in the Vedic scriptures, is one of the deities that builds the cosmos, and he builds other deities. You cannot think so lowly of yourself that you don't think the impact of you, your work, your brain, even your ability to have like a relationship and communication with others won't be a lifeline and a powerful thing eventually that dismantles fascism and oppression, right? Let's get to work. And then finally we have Purnavasul. So it gets a bit complicated in Purnavasul because she's real particular. So a few things. Purnavasul is renewed, right? As we work ourselves through the rest of 2025, FYI, I promise you a renewed sense of conviction, of purpose, of passion is going to be restored in you, right? And even if you feel like, because again, I have this funny feeling, because I know why I'm meant to do Vedic astrology, right? I have a very funny feeling. There's many of you watching this video at the moment who have very particular skills that will be of the most delicious use, but you no longer feel purpose with those talents and skills. It's coming back, but you have to allow that rage, that upsetness to guide you. So then you understand that even if I feel disconnected with the industrial sector or a vision, the purpose in my work is bigger than me and my pleasure. So I need to get to it. And you will re-find your pleasure and your joy in being of service, you know? And then also Purnavasul deals a lot with bigotry, closed-mindedness. So again, if Jupiter's a planet of expansion, yeah, like I've said this for a while now, the lunatics are fully out the asylum. This is like if, you know, like I'm a big geek, right? But you know, like in the Batman films or the comics, when essentially like Batman kind of like disappears and then all the criminals are out like floundering about, we're very much that's the era of Gotham that we're in as a society. But you, Robin, I believe in you. Batman's eventually going to come up, but we have to make do with what we have, right? And also this idea of expansion, Jupiter's an enlightener. Your voice, your steps, whatever that is, right? You will bring a certain amount of light to situations and then challenge these obviously very concerning people and their views and the actions they are taking to forge the society that they're trying to condemn us to live in, which we won't be condemned to live in, but we've got to get to work, right? So saying all that, let's get into nitty gritty of Ketu and Mars and understanding what happens when they've came together and how we meant to use that to kind of get to work, okay? if you didn't know, Ketu is the most fiery and spiciest planet we have in Vedic astrology, to the point that you'll notice if you ever encounter someone who has a lot of planets conjunct with Ketu, oh my God, not only can they read people to filth, but even if they're the types who are cool, calm, and collected, when they lose their rag, I honestly think it must feel like, what is that place in Italy that the volcano erupted? It must literally feel like Mount Vesuvius is, you've been caught off guard, and all you can do and pray is hope when you return to ashes, that shit happens as quickly as possible. You know, Ketu very much has that heat in it. And the worst thing is, because Ketu's kind of headless, it's just, the energy will just keep coming out. It will just keep coming out. It'll just keep coming out until the body kind of, almost like a chicken that gets, it will keep going, you know? Now, imagine the delight of such a planet joining with Mars, who, you know, a lot of us see as just naturally aggressive behavior. But I think when you look at Mars, you have to look at the details of Mars, because I think each of the planets, when you study Vedic astrology, they have a level of aggression in them, but it plays out differently. Now, what's very unique about Mars is the only planet that symbolizes power struggles and power coups. So again, let's think about the time which we exist in. You are being fed up or being pushed around and dictated to by these different kinds of bullies, whether that's symbolic, whether it's societal, whether it's within your personal lives, but very much, bestie, you're at your limit. And that's perfect, because sometimes what it takes is people being pushed. And, you know, what's that phrase? The straw that broke the camel's back. We're very much in that era. And that's great, because let me flip you onto the good side of Ketu and Mars. So again, Ketu symbolizes artistic expression, wealth accumulation, breaking through limitations, freedom, liberation, right? Spicy, yes, but the ability to be free, to be independent, and also in your independence, it's not isolation, but it is like one of the most blessed planets when it comes to long-term wealth and legacy, right? Because it's a type of stuff where, like, because you took a chance, because you push past whatever obstacles people put on you, because you're absconded from society's norms, in what seems like, oh my God, so like, can't believe they're doing that, how crazy, oh, all that crap. In your defiance, you essentially, whatever kingdom God has for you, is in your absconding and taking every step, even if it looks like to other people you're walking into darkness. And it's that kind, it's like, it's not even FU money or like FU safety. It's like that long-term endures. Again, think about Ketu going through Leo, right? We know not only are the new game changers initiated onto their path, they are now building that generational wealth or that cultural, societal prosperity that completely changes the trajectory of their people, and again eliminates the tokens, which we love, right? And that artistic expression, baby. And you think of it like this: when you're scared of conflict, right, or whatever it is, your flavor of standing up to other people, usually there's a direct correlation in your self-expression. You will minimize yourself. You will code switch. You'll do whatever to make sure you are not putting yourself in a position where anyone can critique you, ostracize you, isolate you, retaliate against you. But fun fact, each and every one of us, for whatever reason, are existing in the era of fascism and what I could only describe as like the final demon of oppression. We should all feel so worried if we are not being criticized, if we are not being antagonized and essentially in line of conflict with these weirdos. Because guess what that would mean? You're either complicit, you're on the side of the weirdos, and like you have some spooky beliefs. But either way, I think for now, if you are in the heat, it's fine. You're cooking. We want that, right? And then again, even this thing of liberation, don't think you feeling the way that you do is you going into isolation or it's going to lead to a lot of loss. No, you're being liberated. Because I also think about what it costs you to suppress your anger. Think about what it costs you to keep going along with these very exploited norms in all the different flavors they come with. I was thinking the other day, capitalism is obviously a fuckery within itself, but how do we exist in a time where people are working more than they, do you know, like, there are researchers that are showing people are more poorer now than they would have been in medieval times. Even in India, they are literally more poor than they would have been under the British Raj, so the British occupiers. And that's because the oppressors have some reason took on the bodies of the oppressed victims, you know? So my point was, so people are working more than they have ever done, but they're unhealthier, their homes are smaller, and this is going to be another YouTube essay that we do shortly. But I was thinking, the only thing we ever know about people is their consumption. And do you think, because they constantly have us consuming like streaming services and like non-physical products, they're kind of like manipulating us to think, oh, because I was thinking about this the other day, it's not normal that if something is sleeker and more small, that necessarily is better. Because why is it not a flex to have like 100 different DVDs in your home that are a reflection of all the things that you love or your family love? Why is it more of a flex to have access to a streaming platform where you don't really get the things that you love, that have a time limit on it? Like, I do think there's like some psychological thing behind our consumption and the increasing amount of shit that we're not having and we're losing, and the exploitation of it all. So I think, again, I would not feel like boycotting. You boycott a Starbucks, you boycott an Amazon, what else? You boycott a Netflix, a Spotify, whatever, right? You're not losing anything. You're gaining your money back. And if anything, you can go and take that money and actually buy products or have stuff that lasts and is yours forever. We don't want to... They're trying to get you used to the idea of renting. If you really deep it, it's trying to make you feel like, because why is it this? You're being normalized to exist in the most grotesque economic time we have ever seen and be thankful. But meanwhile, billionaires and people who've made their wealth through the most disgusting of means of exploitation, demonization, fear-mongering, have assets that last forever. Like, think about, you're not, to leave those people and those ideologies is your liberation, but they will make you feel like you're losing, and you're not. They're losing. The second you abscond, the second you don't let them influence it, the second you refuse to participate in the way they conduct society, they're fucked. That's why, like, if you look at history throughout the years, a lot of like because we've always had mega wealthy people and they've always been arses. It's a story as old as time. They used to fear peasants. They literally used to fear like the poor revolting. We need to bring back that level of intimidation and bullying. That's truly the shit I'm on, right? And then if you look at Mars's aspect, listen, Mars represents courage, adventure. It's your health. Oh my God. So like, again, you're being taught in so many ways. If you keep kicking and acting like you're not angry, you're not depleted. And the thing is, don't you think it's a bit insane that because everything is interconnected, hibiscuses. So again, if you met me early doors, you very much are used to me running about Starbucks spirituality and how I hate a lot of other Vedic astrologers online because I think they're plagued by Hindu fascism. I think they're materialists. I don't like any of these self-help coaches. The tarot girlies can go and like suck their crusty mother's labias. Like, all of them are pricks. Have you noticed how their MO is always to tell you there's something wrong with you, and how everything they say, it doesn't matter what culture they come from or how they structure their guidance, they're trying to make you feel like it's your job to learn how to be happy in circumstances which are deeply disturbing, unfair, and discriminatory. And then I just want you to deep how at some point they all end up kicking with the celebrities, or like, again, literally the big bad industrialist. And it's just like the deepest form of manipulation. You are not meant to feel happy in these circumstances. And it's really good if you don't, because I imagine it means you are self-aware, your consciousness is still kicking in. And even then, if you think about stuff like ChatGPT and the way they're trying to use AI, your brain, your soul, your heart are the most precious things about you. When we get to a place where you are complacent, you don't know how to use them, you rely on something else to do the work of these things and feel your feelings, then we get to a really scary place where you're essentially, I'm going to say symbolically, a servant, if not worse words. The anger you are feeling is God's work, but you have to know how to use it. Because again, going back to courage and adventure, yeah, immediately when we are in conflict, it's very intimidating, it's very scary, but it will teach you how courageous you are, because the whole thing is the things that hurt you rely on your fear. So when you start having very little fear inside of you, or you learn how to confront your fears, bit by bit by bit by bit, you own your circumstances. You can turn that shit around. And it also has a ripple effect because everything is interconnected. So when you're courageous in your own little way, you don't think it inspires other people around you. And don't think so little of yourself that you don't think there's some sort of magic or God working through you when you reclaim whatever part of life you're feeling the most kind of like hurt and let down in. You never know. And also, this is for another video that's coming, but you very much all are the new ancestors. Don't you want to leave a legacy or at least a path where you carved it out, you did whatever, so you made it a little bit smoother for them to go along? Because our job now is to get them to the finish line. And they are very much capable of getting to the finish line of liberation, of inclusion, of a decent society. But if we give up, if we keep trying to suppress our anger, if we keep trying to act like it's our responsibility to make ourselves happy in circumstances which we have not created, but we have been complicit in, and we've got too used to saying like, this is all that can be, then we're failures. Then we are the ones that are going to cuss out. We will be the reason they have negative karmas. So again, when you put this all together, yeah, like the other bitches say, Ketu and Mars, so much conflict, so much violence. But in reality, it's not bad because it is you putting a backbone instead of a wishbone. It is you literally saying it is a motherfucking threat that I'm telling you I'm not going anywhere until I see changes, and do your worst because I will do 10 times worse. And also, one thing we don't talk enough about, Mars represents independence, right? Ketu is detachment. This is another layer of solidarity because it's not just you by yourselves now. You are being shown the things that upset you or the problems you're going through, bless you, but they're not unique to you. Other people hurt like this. So why don't we all get the band together, work out a fucking symphony and make a difference? You know, a banger is a banger. And, you know, you have the potential, but you have to learn how to work through it strategically, because otherwise, again, going back to like the very understanding of Ketu and Mars, if the person is not grounded in themselves, or again, there's loads of different karmas at play, but let's put it like this, right? Ketu and Mars, if someone doesn't know how to handle this energy properly, they will burn out. Or they will allow their rage to eat them up, that they do incorrect actions that don't age well. And again, they are their own undoing. So this rage is about strategic action. And also, I mean, I mentioned this on my Patreon and stuff, but I just want you to know, if you're watching this video and you happen to be one of the people who are unsavory, and you know how you're complicit in other people's harm, you have a weird, spooky brain with weird, spooky movements. This is when it's written in your life. This is the beginning of the end. And you can be as hateful, as violent as you want, but all you are doing is cementing the perfect stuff for history to document as. And also, think of it like this. Your cruelty, your callous, your very mean, strategic hate is the shit that inspires other people to go, it's enough. But don't think that like you're victorious. So you may have the upper hand now. You might think in my intimidation, in my fear mongering, like whatever. But the end is the end. That's written. All that's happening now is the characters are being set up for the Leela. And it finishes. Saying that, in fact, I want to run you through a few headlines that occurred when Ketu and Mars have been conjunct this year, so you understand what standing up to a body looks like. And I hope deeply it inspires you to know you are not alone and you are very capable. Example number 1. Between June and July of this year, we watched the Gaza Freedom Flotilla go towards Palestine. Do you understand how powerful that is? You had these people put their life on their lines, and you had well-known public figures and figures who knew they would be arrested. If not, they went on that boat with obviously the intention to make sure aid got to the Palestinians, even though it was obstructed by the Israelis. But what do you think that does for people around the world? You are watching people who naturally are already in a cozy position, in all honesty, could carry on with their separate things about activism, come together and say enough is enough. You think you can stop us fighting for these people's freedoms because you don't expect us to turn up. It's on site, my guy. Like, do you understand how powerful that is, hibiscus is? Think about how many of us are so desensitized to human suffering. But like, it's so bewildering to me. But if you think about the amount of harm that we all know that is consciously happening, so in Sudan, in a Congo, in India, in different parts of Korea, in different parts of Europe, like, we know the suffering and we know like it's vibrant, it's vicious. And for some reason, the perpetrators of this harm never ever feel like the everyday person will link up with others and put pressure on them to stop. And that flotilla was one of many ventures that will come in the future of different cultures, different people from walks of life coming together to stand on business. And I need you to understand that, right? Let me know if you want me to start teaching about colonialism, like university style, and I can put up lectures if you want, right? But the blueprint of colonialism is the following. It will divide people, even groups that exist inside the same country, so it's easier for the colonizer to rule and extract wealth. It very much needs division to thrive and keep functioning. So one of the worst things for a colonial entity to have to experience is, number one, those same groups who are pitted against each other unifying. Number two, them collectively no longer working for them, or again, reclaiming their wealth or only doing business amongst them and absconding from their ways of working. So again, if you study like colonialism in the 1800s and 1900s, one of the first things they did was they put in labor laws. And they basically made it a criminal act if you were not participating for their companies and functioning in such a way that makes them profit. These stories are not over. I, on TikTok, have explicitly told you what Amazon is and what it's going to create in the future. Think about your actions. Because put it like this, maybe for a moment it's inconvenient you can't buy from an Amazon, right? But you then give the norm for small businesses and real people to collect that wealth. And they will put so much love, care, and relationship with you that it will feel good from where you purchase, and they'll know you over time. Does that make sense? Like, that freedom flotilla for me was such a striking thing of defiance, because we're no longer pleading with our governments to intervene and make a difference. F you all will do it, and there's nothing scarier to them. And I think the third thing I really want to focus on was the cultural impact, right? So a lot when you study colonialism, one of the first things, again, they do is they seek to erase any part of the culture that isn't profitable, can't be fetishized, all that kind of jazz. So again, when you see these people double down on who they are culturally and like saying why it's important to them and like the impact it has on other people to think about how they culturally are meeting this moment is so powerful, right? So again, that's what I'm saying. You, this Ketu and Mars energy, you'll have those astrologers say like, and to be fair, I did part predictions, but they were about the other planets. Yes, it's a time of great violence. We don't have to bullshit, right? But I'm asking you, who is being violent and is there purpose in their violence? You have to learn how to stand up. And even with like the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, fine, it was stopped. It was not allowed to touch down, but we knew that was going to happen, right? But they documented everything. They attempted it. And even after that, another Freedom Flotilla goes and they'll send another one. They're killing Palestinians at aid sites, right? And the whole thing is they're relying on us to be like, oh, that's such a shame. We didn't know. Like, whatever it is, they are really heavily relying on us to be docile, to not take action, and to believe all their propaganda. You have no idea how spooky you lot are when you are defying them. That's Ketu and Mars. It's not just like anger. It's the ability to stand up to a bully and complete, because Ketu is forever. Ketu is karma, right? Ketu is legacy. You have no idea how powerful and impactful you all are. you need to take yourselves more seriously. You need to get to work. And with that, let's look at example number 2. Number 2, each and every one of us, unfortunately, exists in a country where our fascist governments are becoming heavily anti-immigration. And that is a distraction, because I think it's really funny how quickly you can find money and create units to take on like these horrible immigrants, which FYI are fleeing the countries which you decimated, you tampered in, you harmed. I think it's just really, really funny. You all can get something together for that, but to this day, you cannot address the harm that you create on your citizens. So you don't want to talk about how you put us into austerity. You don't want to talk about how culturally you have become so regressive that women are not safe, children are not safe, and the elderly we've normalized them being exploited and harmed. But thank God you picked up a poor victim of horrors that you manufactured. It's bullshit, right? And this got me thinking, because again, with this rhetoric of anti-immigration, as much as it is a distraction, I very much think they think we won't intervene, right? They really think we're gonna, because again, like there's so many nuances when you talk about, right? So like again, in the UK, when you have like these awful fucking like radio TV shows where like Tom, Dick and Harry call it in, I've had like fellow brown people being like, well, I'm British Indian and I honestly don't agree with immigrants coming into our country. And I just need you to know, every time I hear it, I curse them. And if the power word is strong on me, so many bitches are down and out currently. You're welcome. But I look at it this, right? They heavily think we're all going to agree with it. No one's going to intervene. And for some reason, we just would have no empathy, right? And for some reason, we would buy into their weird rhetoric of thank you for protecting us. And like, what? No. So with that, my example number 2 was in America and even in the UK, we've seen it. And I'm so proud of people, man. When they were sending out these anti-immigration forces, whether it's ICE in the US, or I don't know what you call them in the UK minus losers, they were heavily obstructed by everyday citizens. In the UK, it was so embarrassing. They were picking up old nannies in the street who were basically telling them to fuck off. And I'm like, bro, don't you feel so embarrassed right now? The height of your career in defense is taking on someone with a hip replacement. Oh my fucking God. 2025, the year of the Great Humiliation, and it's documented on media and in a place where we have viral content. Gagged for you. But then, if I give you a specific one, I thought a lot of the Haitians, actually. So, and in different parts of the states and stuff. So, if you didn't know, the Haitians basically began and led one of the most successful slave revolts, and they did not allow the French or the Americans to have any rest when they were trying to enslave Haitians, right? So they have big business, right? It's just like seeing, again, like everyday people who are teachers, nurses, like people in like council estates, like everyday people that you don't really think are deeply political or like would care that much, or for some reason wouldn't exude that courage. And just to see the way they step on these officers, they're fucking slashing their tires, they're making sure they're so tired they can't do their jobs by honking their horns, they're going up to the hotels they're staying in. Like, to see that level of solidarity, of courageness, and like all these things is memorizing. And again, I keep telling you, you can see it in global news. So for instance, something happens in one country where someone's standing up, give it like 7 to 10 days, you will see another person in a different country perhaps mirroring that action, or again feeling inspired and standing up to the same problem in their country in a different manner. But that's what I'm saying. Don't let them make you feel like they can be violent, nasty, demonic, and you don't have something about you to make a difference or like resist it. Even then, you know, like Ketu represents like our ancestors. This is something we'll talk about in the future, but when I tell you 2025, like the unfinished work of our ancestors is very much a top priority. I just think it's so fascinating because all of us has existed unfortunately, in a media time where people from our communities, it's only ever, my God, the tokens and the pick-me's that make positions of leadership, make that media representate, like all that nonsense. And it's so funny how God has just put a little, astrological sprinkle over us that all of a sudden they give us the ick. All of a sudden we'll like pick them up. And then because we are straying away from these people in our communities who are complicit with the oppressor, now you're getting the game changers. And I said this in a video that I made earlier this year. The only job we have to do, hibiscuses, is as if you are a game changer, then take up all the space. Don't be scared. Like you be on your bad boy shit, right? But hibiscuses, we are responsible for platforming these people, protecting these people, getting behind these people, and like getting the job done. And I think again, like when you come from certain people, that as like you almost like a video game, you collect coins, right? You come from people who have fought back. You come from people who have defined. You come from people who have resisted. And put it this way, right? Because Ketu represents breaking bondages. Even if you came from people that will say maybe did not exude the heroic shit we want to see, right? You can break that bondage. You can make a difference. You don't have to suffer the same fate. The downfall of colonialism is layered and it's nuanced. But one thing you will see throughout all the different cultures breaking their bondages is this ability to break away and make a difference, but a difference in a way where you're not repeating the same mistakes of the past. You're not being sugar-coated, because Ketu and Mars doesn't like any of that sweetness, but you can do it, And with that, let's look at example number 3. So it turns out example number 3 is actually multiple examples, but let me read them out, because again, I think we exist in a time where media is being weaponized against us all to stay in a state of fear, in powerlessness, in hopelessness. And I just want you to know that's not the fucking case. And there are people right beside you all over the world fighting, and you have an obligation to do the same, because in us breaking the social contract of fear, of manufactured in poverty, of all this like, it's just real nasty shit. There's so much happiness, but we got to start breaking, like a Greek at a restaurant when they throw down them plates. Like that's the vibe we're on. So number 3, in Nepal, you essentially had loads of students burning effigies of, I think it was like the prime minister or an education minister. And essentially they were protesting the privatization and the commercialization of higher education. I know the Americans feel some type of way now. And I know the UK babes must definitely feel some type of way now, because we used to have great education and it was very affordable. And then look what the people voted for and look how we suffered, These people have seen enough happen across the world. They went, absolutely the fuck not. You are not about to dog us out the way you have all done. And just because you were inspired by the oppressors, we're not playing. And we need you to know we don't run that shit. We will not be complicit in this shit. And it's just the way they didn't stop. And again, I can only think like maybe they thought we'd be like us in England, right? So when they raised like the prices of like university and colleges, I was really young, but I don't think there was much resistance, or whatever the resistance was, it wasn't gangster enough, right? These men took to the streets. They literally use fire, Ketu and Mars, right? But they protested because they're like, you are not about to normalize icing us out, not giving us employment opportunities, and then making it even harder for us to not have access to knowledge and critical thinking skills that could also help us fight you. Absolutely fuck not. And it has working. The next one I had, this is very, very sweet. So essentially in the UK, there was this really nice story of, there was a child who's quite heavily bullied in high school. And again, this is a child who's neurodivergent. I think has like particular needs and is seeing the world and processing the world in a different way. They basically, no one asked them to their prom. They didn't feel very comfortable to go to their prom, all that kind of jazz. And I'm not sure how it came to be, but someone from a biker club had got wind of the story. And then all of a sudden, 1,500 bikers, from what I assume are the same club or neighboring clubs, took this child to prom. And I can't think of a more like sticker entrance. The other thing I was thinking was, it was so sweet because again, and this is a horrible thing about stereotype and biases, you had what looked like the biggest fan of Sons of Anarchy, the TV show, doing this memorizing speech about the importance of inclusion in education, how the lack of research and understanding of like the class system was putting children who were neurodivergent or a little bit different in grave danger, and it should be like the greatest shame of our society. And until we come together and understand them as normal people and then we have failed. And I just thought, like, isn't that so wild that like you saw a child's pain, someone that you're not related to, have no connection to, whatever, and for some reason you felt so moved, not even to like, oh, give the kid a pep talk and like, oh yeah, like I'll take you on a bite. No, you create a whole movement for that child. We sit under the same sky hibiscuses is all I'm saying. Then the next one I had, so this was so sick. So again, not all shades of vanilla are made for the same level of deliciousness. The Irish prove that best. So essentially, if you haven't been keeping up, in Ireland, they're dealing a lot the same way we are with like issues like anti-immigration, this very like unsavory flavor of racism. Like it's just like this, it's so gross. We had race riots last year and the whole country just moved on. And I was like, you were literally burning and killing people on the streets and we're just meant to act like everything's groovy. I think fuck not. So something similar happened in Belfast not too long ago, right? I think it was in June of this year, actually. So in the very early stages of Ketu and Mars beating. And it was brutal. Like, it was something out of, like, you know, when we watch those, like, documentaries of, like, lynchings in America and shit like that, very much on par, right? And the next day is obviously very bleak, very scary for people. It's like so bewildering, right? These people did not waste one moment to unionize, which is our special word of this video, is to unionize and get to work. They made it down to the council hall. They're out there with the big signs, chanting and being like, this is effing disgusting. We are anti-racist. We do not agree. They're like, who are you hooligans? Come outside now and light and day. Let's see how big and bad you are. And I was just like, but it's the fact they did not think for one moment, we need to talk to the council member about this. We need to contact the local government. They were like, oh no, these are our streets. And we will absolutely make sure people feel safe. Because a lot of them were like in Belfast, you have like a really rich community of like actual people who are like from different parts, like Africa, Asia, Europe. So like they have a much more like, I think like potent feeling of what it means to live in like an integrated society of people from all parts of life, right? And again, because Ireland's smaller, I think in so many ways you can see the positive effects really quickly, but you can also see the trials and tribulations. It gets to a point to appreciate multiculturalism, right? And again, you got to think about Ireland's history, right? I don't know if you guys have ever read about like the Irish famine, but we're always told that like there wasn't food in Ireland and all that shit. It's incorrect. It is a manufactured famine. Again, what are we seeing across the world right now? So the Irish have such a unique, I think, experience and understanding of what it means to be oppressed, to be marginalized, and like to be exploited. Because whatever England went on to do to the rest of the world, they practiced on Ireland first. Facts. So again, Ketu represents ancestors. And I like, honestly, when I read this stuff, that's when I feel the most alive. That's why I'm like, that's why I do my astrology. This, like, it's working because you're speaking to people, they're understanding that you're empowered. Thing is, when you live in a perpetual state of wanting love and life, wanting like nicey-niciness, you're ineffective and the soul is dormant. You're not going to go through the process of self-realization. You're not going to hit like any real religious or spiritual experiences. You very much like just rot it. Like, bro, it's... Do you know why the Gilded Age was called the Gilded Age, guys? So if something's gilded, let's just take this idea of an apple, right? I could have an apple, I spray it in a very thin layer of gold, and you're like, oh my God, luxurious. But what you don't know is that apple is rotting inside. And actually, if we cut through the gold, we would find probably a decimated piece of fruit. But, you know, it's encased in gold, so we think it's everlasting. And that is talking to current times also. So you have a lot of like American economists and different kind of academics saying like, we're in Gilded Age 2.0, because the Gilded Age was essentially a bunch of billionaires, industrialists, but now they come in tech form, basically making all these industries, which again in nature were exploitative, And yes, whilst they made loads and loads of money and what seems like progress, it was only created off the backs of literally working the working classes to death, normalizing class segregation, and just a lot of spookiness. So yes, money was achieved and maybe you can claim some level of innovation, but what did it actually create? And what stopped it was people coming together, was the people who were the victims of this oppression, of this exploitation, saying enough is enough. We're going to make it really hard for you to keep functioning, and bada boom, bada bing. Look where we are. Literally, I don't know how many ways I can say this, but like the Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos, the weird guy who runs Spotify, the Google CEO, these are all the barons of the modern day. And you shouldn't fantasize or romanticize them. You shouldn't idealize them. You shouldn't give them a fucking penny. Abscond, resist, and watch how the whole world switches. But for as long as you keep dealing with them, I don't know, I liken it to, I don't know if you're into vampire stuff, but who is that like little minion that follows Dracula around every time the story's, you like that, you know, the minion from Dracula, it's very unattractive, it's giving gimp, it's just, do you understand how you come across? Anyway, the next story I had was, there was this, forgive me, I don't have the name here, but I read an article about a leader in Nigeria, because Nigeria is made up of different groups and tribes and stuff like that. But essentially, I believe he belongs to like one of the Muslim groups, right? But he's essentially like a Sufi. He's very much in that type of Islam. Essentially, my man, a big bad leader of a tribe, said, I want you to know, if any of you hurt women, I'm talking you beat your wife, you do any of this spooky shit, not only is it against Islam, but I'm removing your seat. You guys will get no power in my society in like kind of this space over here. And I just thought, bro, that is, again, the most delicious use of Mars and Ketu coming together. Because again, Mars does symbolize, at the time of making this, Mars symbolizes like boys and young men. And I just kept thinking, all we have seen in June and July is why people need to parent these fuckers better and not enable them. I don't know if you guys watch Love Island UK. I felt so angry as I came to this conclusion. But it's so funny because people have been like, this is the worst set of boys on Love Island. And I'm like, no, these boys have always been in Love Island because Ketu and Mars are here. You are more sensitive to their fuckeries. But what is it trying to say to you? We should stop normalizing this. And this is what it looks like in real time. So don't fantasize about them. Don't try and play it off and make a joke or act like it's a norm in the culture. Eradicate it. And look where we get. Same way as this leader did. So again, that's so cool. The other thing is, in Bangladesh, Bangladesh basically are going through their own revolution and good for them. So they threw out essentially a really oppressive leader last year. She's a prick by all means. Now, essentially, they've got to the part where it's always the trickiest, the most sensitive time of how do we put together a government or a ruling body that is fair and inclusive and isn't so fixated on revenge, because that's when we lose heat and liberation and movement and inclusion. So again, it was student protests last year that really helped like get the movement going. This year, where, you know, it's been nearly a year on, they started using like memes, music and art to push back on the current people who are holding power to say, listen, this is not the best of the work we could be doing. And actually, are you any better than the bitch that we threw out? And it's just so interesting to me because again, Ketu is artistic expression. Mars can speak when it wants to. So to see that accumulation, again, that's why I say to you, activism comes in so many different flavors. You need to get to work. And then the next thing I want to talk to you about is 250 million workers went on strike in India. So this is why I keep telling you, watch your consumption. For understandable reasons, many of us never really think about where our everyday products come from. And we do take them for advantage. We think we should be able to so easily get tea, sugar, coffee, chocolate. Like, yeah, of course, a cotton shirt should only cost me $10. It's an obscenity that it doesn't cost me that. Bear in mind, the person who makes your garment barely would make 10 cents and most likely is harassed, bullied, and again, put to the point of exhaustion so you can have your nice goodies. Those people are standing up for themselves. And because in India, you have this really precarious situation where essentially the fascist regime is like, we're progressing and all of this shit. And it's like, no, this is capitalism. If you didn't know, there are huge parts of South India that are really Marxist. In North India, we tend to be more socialist, right? But either way, capitalism is not in our DNA or any of our ideologies. If anything, our ideologies, even the religious ones, were created to make sure we don't fall in line with capitalism, because the original capitalists of us were the Brits, right? Before then, we had fair trade. We had, like, it's very ethical, right? So now, and thank God, the babes are switching up and saying, no, you're saying you're going to give us more opportunities, but we don't want those opportunities if it's literally we die, we get exploited, and we barely earn $5 a week. For what reason? And again, in India, it's very intimidating to be an activist, to protest, because it's very much like cowboy rule. Retaliation is much more gangster than like you would expect in a Europe or anything. And bless them, 250 million of them went on strike. And they kept it up, and they were not scared by police. They were not intimidated by their bosses, because they said, if we all go on strike, what money can you make? Where can you go? What good is it paying a manager if the staff don't want to work? Union, right? And then the next one, and again, we've been seeing this, but it really heated up during June and July. Mexico is really in its bad bitch era. Really and truly, like, I had so much fun creating like Mexico's charts on TikTok. It really is on the brink of so much goodness, and it just needs to keep going the trajectory it is and hold its nerve. But in Mexico, you had so many babes protesting against gentrification, and I'm really, really passionate about this. So, you guys don't know about this. So basically, growing up, I've always really, really liked Mexican culture. Originally, it was introduced through food, and then, like, unsurprisingly to no one at all, I was really hipster in my teenage years. So then I learned loads about like Mexican writers, artists, filmmakers, and then like, I don't know, like it's one of those cultures where I've always just found it like so beautiful, so interesting. Even like Mayan astrology, oh my god, like and it was really funny because my Mayan astrology matched all the messages for my Vedic astrology, and I just was like, oh, like this is like the beauty of God, right? And like I've met like so many wonderful indigenous Mexican women like through doing readings and all of that, right? So like it has like the most special place in my heart. And I think it's so funny because as an outsider, people are probably like, well, why would you feel so passionate about their causes? So I'm like, I think in Mexico's causes, I see a lot of Punjab's causes. So I think like to wish them well and to guide them, hopefully that energy would return to Punjab when it's our time, right? But anyway, getting back to it, I think it's fucking arse in three regards. Number one, you have all these Americans who voted in MAGA running away to Mexico. No, absolutely not. Number two, who are these demonic digital nomads? You all need a flip-flop thrown at you. I don't think it's good because you know what it is? Digital nomads, again, are the normalization of work exploitation. I don't think it's healthy for any individual to not have a rooted home. It's wonderful to travel. Many Bourdain wishes upon you all. But to not have a home base or a country that you are, and like to participate in that society and to build and like give back, bad vibes, weirdo vibes, what the fuck? And then thirdly, can I just ask you something? Why do you think at any point it is acceptable or people would not feel angry that you've gone to their beloved country and you're bragging about, it's so much cheaper and I can do A, B, and C. And meanwhile, they can't afford to rent one room. They can't afford to buy vegetables in their own country, which they go. Oh my God. This is what I'm telling you. Ketu and Mars was teaching you how to suck a punch back. And when I was watching that stuff, I honestly have never been more supportive because throw hands. Because again, it's really weird. I felt like I was watching a documentary recently, but it was like a really old like reality TV show too. And they had like all these like white British women go to holiday in the Caribbean. And I felt so uncomfortable watching them kiki around in essentially a plantation that had been turned into like a hotel. And like it is black men and young black women serving them. They're all in uniforms. I just felt very uncomfortable. And then on top of that, they're saying like, oh, they really want to go on the history tours because it seems really boring. And then I learned through another article that I was reading that when you have tourism in the Caribbean, intentionally they sanitize their history so they don't scare the tourism away. And I was like, Lord of Jesus, this cannot be what God wrote for anybody, and revolt again. Because my thing is, right, I absolutely would be letting you know, oh, I hope you're enjoying it. I understand why you enjoy it, because last time your ancestor was here, he was raping and pillaging and drinking up the rum. I'm sure you feel naturally comfortable the way he felt comfortable and pleasurable. I don't think any good comes from any of that shit. So yeah, again, long story short, we also saw people standing up for themselves, and again, making sure like you're not normalizing exploiting these people and the circumstances that you've created for them to sit in poverty. And also, it's really weird because how can you love like Mexican culture, Mexican land, Mexican food, and be so racist against these people? Or also, it leaves an interesting conversation for people who are of that heritage and want to go back home. There's other stuff that I have to reconcile. But again, like, I'm just saying, if you had an attitude because you were uppity, because like, I made it to America, I live outside, and now you want to come back home. And worse, you want to come home with an attitude. Oh, no. And then finally, this was recent, literally only a week ago. Israeli soldiers went to Tomorrowland, which is a big music festival. They were arrested and questioned on site for war crimes. More of that hibiscus is because whilst they feel like they're safe in Israel and maybe parts of America, Europe, we don't agree. You land, you should be arrested. But you know, in Japan, they're like banning them. And again, I have stories about India, but I would be very proud of Punjab if we went back to our roots and our freedom fighters, you know, little Bhagat Singh, little Udham Singh vibe, little Jarnail Singh vibe, you know, and, you know, people's justice, the citizens' arrest. But this is like, if you think about all these examples I've just ran you through, perfectly, divinely orchestrated. You just have to engage with that energy and be strategic. Because all those stories I've taught you, they are obviously very upset. But it's not just about aha, right? It's very much about stop them from functioning the way they used to exploiting, create an alternative and let them know our MO is to reclaim autonomy, control and authority. You've got too used to stealing. You've got too used to thinking that it's normal for your luxury and pleasure to be manufactured off our pain. And for some reason, we should be thankful and grateful. Absolutely not. You see how the first phase of the dismantling of colonialism is meant to play out. Stand up, hibiscuses. And with that, let me walk you through the Leo nakshatras. And let's think about their flavors a little bit more intensely. Let's begin by looking at Uttafaguni. So Uttafaguni power, Shakti, is the power to make a choice. And it's so fascinating to me because with Uttafaguni, it's not they lack options. Never. They actually have ample. Their unique journey and exercise, if you will, is learning how to pick decisions and choices that truly they want. You know, they don't get caught up in a cycle where they're putting their wants and needs and desires aside for a relationship or perhaps a dynamic or some sort of bondage that isn't very fair. And likewise, learning how to pick choices that are good for the collective. So it's that balance of this works for me, but also it does no harm onto others. So when you think about everything we've been discussing, hibiscuses, that rage is meant to provoke a change in the way you pick options, in the way you even recognize your own happiness and safety in those dynamics. Again, if we go back to this understanding, Uttafaguni is ruled by Aruman, so he's the god of like social contracts, right? In every regard. So what's the purpose of coming together with someone? What are the responsibilities and kind of the maintenance we got to do to make sure those partnerships stay well and they're fair and they are nurturing? And thirdly, how do we keep ensuring that we are developing in such a way that we do not become weakened by these partnerships? And again, these partnerships bring out aspects of us that are helpful to the world around us. Think about everything. I promise you, your rage, your anger, your upsetness is so justified. But you can do it in 3 ways, right? So number 1 is just allowing yourself to feel angry and not trying to shame yourself that I have to accept this is normal. right? The social contract is meant to be broken at the moment because it's not fair and it's not normal. So go with it. Number 2 is then in real time thinking about the quality of people you have surrounded yourself with, right? You don't have to get super upset or make yourself even more depressed. Like, I cannot believe like I've ended up here. Like, don't waste your energy further. Instead, go and build community elsewhere, because the original thing of Ottoman is the purpose in the relationship, right? And again, don't think of it in like a materialistic way, right? You want to go and learn a new hobby, it will build you a community. You feel really passionate about socialism and political fairness, go kiki with those fuckers, right? But like, let the purpose be something that's savory, because anything that's rooted in unsavory, anything that's rooted in exploitation, any form of corruption, I promise you now, the cosmic ass kicking that is going to come towards these people, and it's not just gonna like hurt for a bit. We will literally forever see the cosmic stamp of the footprint when it landed on their ass cheek, and likewise it keeps them in a state where they can't get back up. So be very intentional with who you surround yourself with. And then I think just finally, right, you have to be really honest in yourself in what is my role here? How do I make sure that I am fulfilling my responsibilities? I am not resentful of what it will take, and how do I make sure like I am doing the right thing in these things? So you know, it's like always that trope when you get parents like complain about, well, I did A, B, and C for you. It's like, but that child didn't choose to be born. You chose to have that child and raise that child. So don't want collapse and celebrations for what you're meant to be doing. That kind of trope, right? And if you feel like these relationships are a burden, it tells us 2 things, right? So either number 1, you're in the wrong dynamic and all of that. Or maybe number 2, you're so used to exploiting these people that all of a sudden it's burdensome now because you're not used to them asking for their equal share, speaking their voices in A, B, and C. But that means you're a piece of shit and you got to learn how to handle yourself. And the third thing I want to tell you about Ulta Faguni before we move on, it's a nervous warrior energy. So the thing about Ulta Faguni, which is so funny to me, they naturally go on to do really, really well in the world, right? It has that level of karma and auspiciousness linked to it. However, they are so nervous. It's kind of like, again, it's like a divine comedy, because when I think of the individuals I've met over time, it will be like the people who like, wouldn't it be great if A, B, and C happened, but I'm not the right person to do the job. And it's like, my guy, you have like, you know how to inspire people, you know how to engage, you know where things need to be changed. Who else are you waiting on? Like, you have the blueprint, go and execute it. And then usually God will like do stuff to kind of like shake them out their comfort zone, and before they know it, they're like the most global leader of a movement that they believed in but didn't think they were going to be the face of, right? Or likewise, Ulta Faguni is such a diplomat, so there always comes a time, I always make a joke of it, because these are not people who like have a mean screw face where it's like, I wish you would. They're not like that. They have the kind of face that's like, I'm deeply saddened by your behavior, right? But something always happens where they kind of abscond from being like diplomatic and like trying to resolve stuff in a way that's comfortable, and they go, enough, you know what? And then the same diplomat or the same lovely dovely energy is that thorn in your side to the person who's taking the piss out of their energy and their resources, right? So just know, in Ulta Faguni's energy, which was the immediate energy that kicked this off, it was never about you carrying on and trying to resolve stuff in a way that everyone's happy. No, this is a time of radical change, and radical change sometimes requires divine rage. But the whole thing is, use that rage to, number 1, light yourself up so other people can see, oh, there's someone like me, or there's someone else out here who like has the same issues I have. So you'll come together. The warmth of community is very purposeful. Then it's the second thing of get to work. Don't let your nerves hold you back. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a complete game plan, but put it to work. And thirdly, if you haven't worked out, Ulta Faguni's rule by the sun is leadership. Ultimately, and what do we think we're learning as we discuss this transit and its ripple effects? You're the game changers. You're the leaders. You're the new educators. You are it, you know? So take up some space. And I think with Ulta Faguni, because it's the second sun nakshatra, the first one's Krithika, I think in Krithika, the sun works in such a way where it's an emboldened warrior. Whereas I think when you see Uttara Falguni, it wants to use its light to create warmth. Again, because with sunlight, things can grow, they can flourish. In Uttara Falguni, it's learning how to use that light to create the prosperity, just the wonderful things that we've been dying to see. But you've got to get over your nervous warrior energy. And in some ways, Uttara Falguni is a really slick talker. So its way of like being a warrior isn't like Political, where it's throwing hands and it's like, it's very much like when it speaks, it's appealing, it's delicious, it's very much like it doesn't have to do too much, but it's kind of like those OG things where it's like, why would you want someone like that when you can literally have someone who wants to hear your thoughts and feelings? And that's how you bring people on, right? So it's not that you have to all of a sudden match your oppressor and mirror them, but in you being different, in you showing that like you very much are about peace, but you are willing to like be serious in ascertaining that peace, all of a sudden it throws a spanner in their works. Bada boom, bada bing. Now this leads us to Purva Falguni. So that's Leo type 5 to 8. Now, Purva Falguni is so naughty but prosperous. So the thing is, it's ruled by Venus. So if you didn't know, Venus in our religious scriptures is eventually very wise, but messes up so much. That's why I find it wild when people like dress like your Venus sign. I'm like, you want to dress like the planet that continually is in the wrong place, the wrong time, loses its vision, and essentially gets involved in all the wrong activities, and only after it's been bollocked like to high heavens then does it reform. Okay, because that sounds like it's going to end well for you, and then you're wondering why you're dressing a particular way, and maybe you're feeling yourself, but all you attract is widows, and if anything your problems get 10 times harder. Switch on hibiscuses. So in Purva Falguni, unfortunately, we see the following. So number one, right, it's very focused on partnership, right? And it understands the power in like shared resources, building assets with other people, all of that. But its issue is it's so quick to change its personality, to minimize who it is, basically to make themselves really palatable and attractive in order to ascertain that wealth or that abundance, however it looks for those individuals. Now, what do you reckon the lesson there is, hibiscus? Because it's exactly what the fuck you think it is. So when Ketu and Mars comes along here, it's very much letting you know it wasn't worth it. It was not worth you mutilating your personality, your aura, your energy, because you thought it would lead you to a place. Because look how empty-handed you are. Look how isolated you are. Look how depleted you are. So if God has shown us time and time again that this is not worth it, go back to self. This is not about learning who you are. You know who you are. You just need to learn how to use that voice and have the courage to start showing up in the world as is. And then the rest will fall into place. Even with Purva Falguni, one thing we say to them a lot is you'll be very prosperous in pretty much any field you want. It's a really big career group, but they have to make sure they don't ever get into a mindset where they're allowing people to pigeonhole them into how they show off their talents and skills, because that's where they'll start losing their abundance. That's where like the lower self-esteem will come. That's where they'll end up with like the abuses, exploitative partners and people who manipulate them. So the sense of self is very, very important, to the point it's a layer of protection, and it cannot be misinfluenced by others. And even then, right, one of the symbols for Purva Falguni used to be a hammock, and it deals a lot with when we are well rested, then our creativity, then like the real impact and magic of our work unfolds. But when we're exploited, when we're exhausted, when we are mentally drained, we are not in a position to deliver our best work. So we have to take our self-care really seriously, and we cannot get into any kind of spooky positions where we are letting weirdos kind of misinfluence us on the things that nourish us and will be good for us, and really they're depleting us. And again, when Ketu and Mars comes here, it's you saying enough is enough. And also, it's you looking at whatever the exploitation is and saying you literally would have fuck all or be worth any value if it wasn't for me. I would claim it all. I am taking back each and every slice of deliciousness, and good luck and God bless, you know? But you have to want that for yourself. And also what you might find is, because Purva Falguni is very heavily associated to like very material wealth, whatever you were doing in the name of a paycheck or paper, no longer worth it. Literally, it will disgust you, you will not know any peace. also you got to keep in mind, one thing I said that really freaked people out, but then I was like, you're actually ratting on yourself right now, because I have never felt more excited for a chapter. Why are you so scared? I said basically, loads of people were basically going to start this chapter. Like, the first few years of this 20-year chapter is them going into a complete destruction and imprisonment, symbolically, spiritually, financially, and it's based off everything they've been up to. So again, like, that loss of wealth, but there's nothing else that comes after it, and there's no like greater meaning. You're very much the baddie in this storyline. You're very much the baddie, and unfortunately you could not learn any other way, even though like God told you several times to stop. So now, you know, it gets a bit fatalistic, but maybe I hope your future descendants don't make the same mistake. Anyways, and I think the last thing I want to say with Pulfaguni, right? Going back to this idea of don't let people pigeonhole how you show off your talents and skills. I've been really feeling it so heavenly. Well, it has been heavenly, but heavily is the word I was probably looking for. So I'm on this big kick at the moment on TikTok where I'm talking about like boycotting and absconding, and like it's becoming more apparent that like how bad the technology and service and products we use and how complicit they are in harming other people, right? And the conversation's fine, you know, we're all saying the same thing, boycott, go and use these services. But then I like express this frustration. Well, I'm like, but this is not enough hibiscuses. You're not thinking big and strongly enough. I don't want you just to go and use other people's products and services. I want you to build them. And then this morning in particular, so I come from a tech background, right? I have built big tech startups, right? I know how to scale them. I know how to sell the products and services. And then I recently was thinking, and it's just a thought, I don't know what legs I have to stand on how I do it. And also, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit self-conscious because I haven't done it in like 3-4 years properly, that I'm like, do I still have that magic in me? You know? But I was thinking, if the game changers are meant to come, that means they're the people who design these products and services. What it doesn't mean is they necessarily know how to sell them, how to market them, how to pick up the speed. And I'm like, well, if God is growing my platform and I've already like, so fun fact, yeah, I've had loads of brands reach out to me. I reject them every time. I never accept their money because money made in blood is just not the vibe. And I always think like, my God provides. So whatever God wants to give me, he can give me. I just think I'm tested on my ability to like say no and discernment, right? But now I recently been thinking, I'm like, well, if you have a product or service, so you have the alternative social media platform where you're not selling our data and we're not perpetuating fascism or harming anyone, and we can tell like independent journalistic stories, we can educate people in a radical way. Holler at me, I'll show you how to sell it and I'll do it for free. If you are the fucker who has like a piece of health technology, I don't know, you know you can catch something out but you don't know how to roll it out or whatever, fuck it, like I'll do it for free. I'll show you how to build, scale and get things in and do those contracts. But then I wonder if I'm like, I don't know, it's like the first time I'm like, I think at some point it's meant to look like that for me. But yeah, I feel a bit nervous because I haven't done it for years. But just, even if you were like, I've had deeper things around like music consumption, right? Because the Spotify thing really wigged me out. Was like, essentially the CEO of Spotify is creating and very much investing in military AI. So I'm not tell you Great War begins in 2025. But I was like, oh no, absolutely. I am shutting down my Spotify play. Like, I don't need it. Like, I can part with this really easily. And then it made me feel deeper about, well, how do we, because if we abscond from streaming platforms, it's actually better for artists. But also, I was thinking people don't really have personalities or like a really individual aesthetic anymore. And it's because we can consume everything. Ironically, we have access to all this media that's basically propaganda, but we still don't have access to like adequate healthcare, adequate education, financial fairness in institutions. So then I was like, maybe I could create something like that. I don't know. I have this thing where I'm like, yeah, I have talents and skills and maybe I can help someone else. I don't know about design products. I definitely don't have the engineering brain anymore, but I don't know, it's a thought. Because the whole point of it is this astrology is done because at some point I'm speaking to game changers and I can see it in my personal readings, but I'm like, maybe it's meant to go to wider people through the next years and it will spark them. But then I've been saying about it, I'm like, but what happens if they have everything but they don't know how to launch it, or they don't know how to deal with like the nitty-gritty arsehole part of it, which is the business side, which unfortunately you girls well versed in. I don't know, I've been thinking about it. I might set it up, but yeah, that's like, when I think about it, it's this option to say, look, you have different talents and skills. You're not homogenous to one thing. Ironically, I could probably use Vedic Astrology to sort out the timings of launches. But it's just this thing of like, don't let people just convince you you're a consumer or you're a bystander. Like, you're made up of different talents and skills and knowledge. Let's put them to work. And also, whatever you don't know, you will learn on job. I cannot emphasize this, right? What was my career thing? So I went from real estate, then into like finance. Well, no, real estate, then what's it called? Like a political research house, then into tech and finance. And the whole time they were transferable skills. I built up a lot of my knowledge on jobs and I learned from other people. And as they were teaching me, I was teaching them. And then it was just like this, because again, like where I used to work up with fintech startups, right? 9 times out of 10, they are really wonderful geeks, right? Who have the world's most smartest products, but they don't know how to speak to their audiences. So like, again, if you have a financial product that will help an immigrant get a bank account and basically start a stable life in a society that does not have the adequate resources, doesn't have the language, like there's so many barriers to entry. There's a way you speak to those people, there's a way that you sell those products, and there's spaces that you will flourish in better than just sending it to a bank and saying like, hey, these are for new people that maybe don't speak English, right? They don't have that. I do. Build it, it comes. And likewise, they teach me about the product. So when they say, oh, this is glitching, I'm like, oh, this explains why A, B, and C goes through that. So maybe we need a new function. Union, isn't it? I think we're seeing how this will shape up. And then finally, sorry to go on and at, guys, we have Maga. So Leo type 1 to 4. And as always, Trump uses Vedic astrology, and I'm pretty sure the world's spookiest of tantric fuckers. But anyway, so Maga is symbolized by a throne. We are ascending and not spiraling like the not yet ex-wife of that CEO who got caught cheating in Coldplay. Nasty work. And also, don't they just look like they bone to Rick Springfield? Like, there's something about them. I was like, this is not serious. And again, another example of 2025 is a year of great humiliation. Watch yourself, right? But again, when you put all this upsetness, all this sucker punching back, it is the first step in putting you in a position of influence, of authority, of community. And it's just about doing stuff ethically and not being spooked by your buddies. There's powers in numbers, and also feeling adequate enough that you can do that. The other thing I was thinking is Ketu and Mars conjuncting in Leo must also be that activation of like your past life karma is now to be in a position of A, B, and C. And maybe previously you have done it, but you didn't perfect it. So in this life we're going to do, or previously you were spooked out of it, but this time I'm going to give you the courage on how to like complete that journey. Because Ketu is unresolved past life karmas. It is also ancestral blessing. So again, like one thing I think about a lot, because I love listening to different like religious ceremonies, right? And someone was talking about, if you knew what the process was to have like the dream or the thing that you asked of God, loads of people turn away, because usually in there's conflict, there's failure, there's a lot of like toughness. That's why God doesn't reveal to you stuff. So when you're going through it, you rarely know why you're going through it. And at the end, and it's only after the fact, you realize, aha. The same way, if you think about a lot of the revolutionary figures that we look up to, a lot of the people we think are really impressive and legendary, do you think in the throes of the tension and conflict and maybe even the harm that they went through, they knew or anticipated like decades later they would be iconic figures and influences to like future generations who find themselves in a similar position? No, but you are fortified by fire, right? And obviously if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. This video isn't for you. It's for the people who are cooking it up, you know? The other thing I was thinking is Marga's obviously unresolved ancestral karma. So it's I think it's like our spiritual duty to finish their work. Because I think, again, with this rising of fascism, because I talked about it really early on this YouTube channel. I think the first thing I hinted at, I created a video which I think was like spirituality and fascism, and I was dropping hints because I didn't have the balls to say like, guys, I think like Hi Hitler is coming back and it's gonna be even worse, right? I was like, let me just talk to you about fascism and like how people can appeal to you and like how you can avoid it. Which in hindsight, maybe I should just go on balls to walls and be like, you're awful motherfucking people and we're about to suffer because you think A, B, and C is attractive. You know? I lost my point. Oh, ancestral correlations. But the reason we are going through this final wave of fascism, because that's what it is, it's not going to repeat after this, is we didn't properly resolve fascism last time. People went off to Argentina. You had these people hired by governments in the science industries, in healthcare, in education. So they've been left to fester. And in some ways, they were shown that if you stay quiet, think it like this. If a fascist is building your society, do you think that society can ever really flourish? And do you not think by default that society, that industry, that sector is done in such a way where supremacy is inherent, harm to marginalized group people is a byproduct? Like, again, they were never, and it's not enough just to throw people in prisons and sentence them. It has to be a complete, because these people can only exist if a culture, a system, a structure, a society, all these things enable them and celebrate them. Soon as you switch up the framework, they never make it past level 1. And even to the point then, they have a personal decision that either you reform and you understand truly this is not prosperous energy, or you stay isolated. And no, I don't think if you keep them isolated, they go on to be powerful. I think they just get depleted, because also I have this very big feeling, whilst there will be many people who've condemned their future generations to like insane circumstances that I really don't wish on many, I recently been thinking like there's going to be at least 30% of them where the karma will be, even though like great granddaddy or whatever was so nasty, so mean, so rude out here. I don't believe in any of this. What a weirdo. And then they just go on to have like healthier ideologies and be nice people. Because don't you think that's like the karmic punchline? If God is a comedian, imagine creating all that mess, all this stupidity just for it to mean nothing and for you to be internalized as a clown. It's not worth it. And lastly, think about Marga's power. This probably sounds really trippy, but its power is to like essentially ascend, right? So it's to basically float between. So what that talks about is when you see two people arguing, you have a higher perspective. And instead of buying into either party's propaganda, you understand what's driving them and you create better circumstances and you unify them. Because Marga's lesson is basically not to give in the peer pressure of other people's ideologies. So don't listen to people who told you, well, this is just how it is, things never change. Oh, things do change. Things have always changed, right? And it doesn't come from people like you, it comes from people like me who are pissed off and think things could be better. There is so much undoing and conflict that's clearly in the air, but it's not bad. You just have to rise to the moment and allow it to kind of shape you. And on that, I want to finish the video by taking you through some of my favorite thinkers, activists, academics, all those kind of figures, and why they talk about conflict is necessary for liberation and for progression. So therefore, don't fear it. Other people done it. You are capable of doing it too, but you've got to find your stride. You probably want to take a big gulp or whatever beverage you have, and then we'll reconvene. So I found different people from different countries and cultures because I need you to understand this is a universal theme and we are all connected in our struggles. And the fact that someone from a different country, a different culture, a different time resonates with you means there's work that is unfinished, and it's our responsibility to drive that bitch on home. So the first one I have, and I'm so sorry guys if I mispronounce any of these names, the first one is actually an Egyptian writer, and I think also she's a feminist figure that I discovered like when I was like 18, 19 in my studies. So her name is Sadri. So she has this line where she goes, "They said you are a savage and dangerous woman. I am speaking the truth. And the truth is savage and dangerous." So again, you know when we talk about these Ketu and Mars energies, which again, really volatile, proper explosive, proper standing up to bullies. One thing the oppressors will always try and do is gaslight, girl boss, gatekeep, right? They will make you feel like you are too much, you're crazy for wanting something different and speaking up, like, oh, why are you being so aggressive for? You know the behaviors, right? If you look at Nawal's life, essentially her journey with activism is she heavily resisted like the patriarchal society of Egypt of that time, right? And she was very big on making sure women's suffering was not normalized. So she was the most disruptive, the most loudest. She criticized everything. She was like, fuck politics, fuck religion. Like, you're using this stuff to weaponize harming us. And then they were like, oh, this is so disgusting. It's unsavory. This is uncomfortable. No one wants to speak about it. But she's like, if you think it's uncomfortable speaking about it, what do you think it feels like for the people who are suffering under it? Ketu and Mars, learn to use your voice. Ketu's artistic expression. You can say zingy shit and it will hook a bitch forever, you know? So very much like, if you don't stand up for yourself, what you will do over time is all this awful stuff that's happening. You know, it's just a norm. It happens. It's always been that way. It just, you know, everyone recovers. They make it happen in their own way. We live through it. No. You don't have to live through it, and nor should we normalize it. And the thing is, if it feels so uncomfortable to hear, it's because what's happening isn't right. It's inherently wrong, demonic, not fair. So if it seems like you're being disruptive, if it seems like you're being rude, unaccommodating, good. The second one I had was Steve Biko. So he basically was an anti-apartheid activist from South Africa. He has this really delicious line where he says, the most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So Biko's really hot on this idea of like the ramifications of colonialism on people's psychology, right? It is a psychological state to be oppressed. And to be liberated is actually a lot of mental work. And it deals with rejecting the internalized like the internalized shame, guilt, and dehumanization the oppressors try to take us through. So for instance, right, you've probably heard about this on the news. In the UK, there's a group called Palestine Action. The government then labeled them a terrorist organization. So if you're a babe that specifically had like anything that said like Palestine Action, they literally, again, arrested old biddies and put them in prison. And I'm like, this is, if not Gestapo, why Gestapo shaped? If not fascism, why the mustache? You know, I have questions. But it's that whole thing of like, it's a very active feeling when you are fighting oppression that you are made to feel like, well, this is just normal. It's almost this idea. It's so sickening that you don't know how to care for yourself. This is the best quality of life you could have. So therefore, naturally, it's very understandable when you go to use your voice, it feels unnatural. It feels very scary, like it's not going to work out, but that's like psychological abuse. Like colonialism is very psychological. So when you start learning you are strong, you are capable, you have talents and skills, you are deeply adequate, right? It completely fucks them up. And this is what I'm saying. I think the bondages between consuming from people and companies we very much know are terrible, from everything, the way they manufacture their products, to the impacts of how they sell and the ramification it has on people's day-to-day lives. Even though that's so explicit to us and it's only going to get more explicit, there's something wrong with our psyche, the fact that we can't stop consuming. We've got to figure that out and break away, you know? The next one I actually want to talk to you about is a activist from China. Again, apologies if I mispronounce. Name is Ai Weiwei. So this was a person who was an artist and also someone who basically revolted like a fuck. They have this quote that says, it's a loss of one's freedom if the loss of freedom is the cost of speaking the truth, then it's a fair price. So this is someone who's very hot on censorship, right? And says, if you get normalized to participating in lying and keeking and sugarcoating, then you enable authoritarianism. So to speak back, to defy, to rebel, fantastic work, you know? And again, even if you look at his art, it basically exposes state violence. And that's the whole thing. To stay silent, to be agreeable is a deep crime in itself. And liberation is very much dependent on communication, you know. Really interesting. There's a eco-feminist in India called Vandana Shiva, right? And, you know, Shiva has this speech where she goes, when we fight for our rights, we are fighting for the rights of nature and future generations. So obviously in India, it's very understandable people will be anti-globalization, because for them, what it looks like is foreigners come in, destroy their land, their quality of life, so they can have technology and they can like have all this internet. And meanwhile, they are sitting in the most extreme heat waves, their food is becoming more scarce, all of that, right? And Shiva does this brilliant job of exploiting corporate exploitation to systematic oppression. And when you resist the dehumanization, both people and environment can thrive. That Ketu and Mars energy, you know? If we look at the Middle East, we have really great figures, right? So there's a Palestinian writer that I really like called Ghassan Hanafi, right? They went on to be a martyr. And essentially, there's this wonderful speech once again where they stole your homeland and said you never existed. So his work basically exposes Zionism, right? And it says, again, when you resist, you're preserving culture and identity. And it's so important that you take up all the space, you create all the art, you keep your voice, because when you stop fighting back, that's when they erase how truly demonic they are. And at some point they can rewrite into history they were the saviors when they weren't. And again, I think that really, really hits home. We also have Shirin Ebadi from Iran. So they were a Nobel laureate and a human rights lawyer. They have a speech that goes, when a government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny, right? So Ebadi basically has fought Iran's kind of like theocratic oppression, right? So emphasizing that justice requires dismantling state-sanctioned dehumanization. Again, food for thought, hibiscus, it's food for thought. And then there's a really interesting current activist. She's from Liberia. Her name's Laima Gabavi, right? She's a peace activist. She says, we will not wait for the men to act. We will demand peace ourselves. So there was a women-led movement that ended Liberia's civil war, proving that marginalized voices can disrupt cycles of violence. What does that look like? Again, hibiscuses, you're being empowered and emboldened. It's not the time to hide. And I could go on and on. Even in France, right? Some of my favorite activists are French, right? So there was a lady, she's Tunisian, right? Her name's Gisela Halmini, right? She has, again, in one of her speeches, she goes, to be a woman is to be in a perpetual dissidence. So Halimi fought France's patriarchal legal system, defending, basically, if you didn't know, North Africa was deeply mutilated by France. And they had like obscene camps and sexual exploitation, right? So she went on to defend like Algerian torture victims and reproductive rights and refused to accept like the French gendered oppression, which, hang tight. And even there's another guy called Stefan Hessel. He was a resistance fighter and a diplomat. Basically, what would it be in English? So I think in French, it's something like index vous, which means I think like time for outrage or something. Hang tight, my French lessons. Basically, he has this manifesto where he urges resistance against injustice from like Nazi occupation. And he basically says like, don't fall for their economic exploitation, reject them, be outraged, be disgusted, spit at them, which in hindsight, amazing. So I think, again, when I think about some of the figures that really inspire me in their work, their speeches, their literature, their actions, there are like three key things. So number one is breaking silence, right? Do not become complicit in oppression. In every way, deviate. In every way, be non-agreeable. In every way, stand up. Number two, I think a lot of the figures that I tend to gravitate towards are people who are very big on reclaiming humanity. So it's not, because I don't really like this idea of party politics. Because for me, I think I'm coming to the conclusion where I just think it's a distraction. And I'm reading this really fascinating book at the moment, which is about identity and how identity is weaponized against marginalized people when they're seeking liberation, right? And I think truly in divine rage, you have to fight for equality and equal justice for everybody. And you have to be very intentional on not contributing to the dehumanization of people who are suffering under oppression. So for instance, in real time, think about how people will demonize working class people. So when they go through like their hardships and stuff, people are like, oh, it's because they're lazy, it's because they're this and that. When it's like, no, what you're failing to acknowledge, this is someone who's put inside a system that will grind them out and does not see them worthy of life or opportunities. So we should not be harming and contributing to any nasty stereotypes about these people. We need to look at the governance, the systems, the structures that are leading to these people to being exploited. She's getting there, she's growing up, she's maturing. And then thirdly, disrupting normalization. Or if there's one thing you will know about me, I love clowning. There's just something in me where I do not care for this. Yeah, even in my corporate career, so notorious for fucking shit. Oh, I hate it because I literally be in meetings and just say like outlandish shit because I'm like, this is bizarre behavior. And if we keep sitting in these passive aggressive energies and acting like any of this is normal, I dread to think what brain dead bitches will create in these industries. And honestly, I was right. So again, be disruptive, because if you get to a point where you are not reactive, you're not annoyed, you're basically not responding, that gives them all the power. But when you're like, why are you weird? Ew, like show them that you have the ick, show them that you're uncomfortable, show them that like it's all vile. All of a sudden, it really fucks up their plans. It slows them down. And sometimes if you can do it well and enough, you can completely stop them. But you have to contribute to not normalizing these behaviors. You have to contribute to not normalizing like the destruction of freedoms, I suppose. You got to be down with the cause in a way that like you'll ride it till the wheels fall off. And again, pay attention to the things that so-called leaders or people in your life are very keen to destroy and what they are very tightly trying to cling on to. That tells you everything you need to know about where you need to put your energy and what you need to preserve, right? Other than that, I'm all sorts out. I hope that was helpful. Hope you feel empowered. And I'll speak to you later. Bye, hibiscuses.
If I was the one that started the fire.